Yeah, good, good, good. I do have a little backstory about Brazil. I have nothing to do with Brazil per se, but my brother was a very wise man who found a Brazilian woman. So I have two nieces that speaks Portuguese, and when they want to teach their uncle, they swap to Portuguese. So I always watch Portuguese as this language that I'm being teased with from my nieces. So I hope you two behave today. Promise? Good. On to something much more serious anyways. So no doubt about it that I think for those of you who've been in Cannes over the years that something have changed in Cannes. When we look down at the beaches, it does seem like technology, digital, is here to stay. And obviously it's become harder to grab the attention of people. It's been harder to push through, to keep motivated, to get people to click on the right thing. My niece at the moment, she calls advertising skip ads, because that's what she does, because most of the time when she's on YouTube, she more sees it as a 50-second prison sentence, because she wants to watch the content and then there's this ad in between. So what I really like about having Diageo and Nestlé, two quite different companies represented here today, is that both of them are trying to kind of think differently about how we can maybe navigate this space. What if we start being maybe useful, helpful, intentional, purposeful? So that's what we're going to explore here today. And I have, all the way from Brazil, obviously, first, from Diageo Brazil, Guilherme, who's the Marketing Executive Vice President of Diageo. Welcome.
Thank you.
And from Nestlé Brazil, quite a different company. I mean, beverages, yeah, broad portfolio of beverages, but you're everywhere, in homes. And so I'm really excited also to see the perspective that Ionah Kochen has, and she's our Vice President of Marketing and Corporate Communications. Welcome. I got the name completely right, hopefully.
Completely right.
Good, good, good,
You
good.
can call me
Guy.
Guy.
Yeah, good, good, good. So there you go. So obviously, as I sort of set the scene in terms of the challenges that we're faced with right now, in terms of sort of captivating people, being useful, all of these things. Obviously, as a beverage company, as Diageo, experiences is something that's sort of almost built in, the rituals, all of that around beverages. So how do you make sure that in today's world where it's so hard to get attention, that you make it memorable?
First of all, really good to be here. Really good to see some faces that I know. I think for Diageo first, we are a company that really focuses on socialization and celebration. I think when we put that in front of us, I think we create a strategy that goes beyond products, that goes beyond liquids, that goes beyond bottles. And I think it's becoming harder for a marketeer when we talk about being relevant in culture, is to define where not to be. I keep talking to some of my peers and everybody in the industry in Brazil. When we go to a festival, for example, the festivals and some of the music festivals are becoming almost as a Disneyland for brands. That you have all types of industries, all types of brands. And then I keep asking myself, like, what does this brand have to add value for that moment, that specific moment, to those consumers that just want to listen to good music, maybe have a drink, have something to eat, and maybe that's it. So we are starting to be really clear on where not to be, and I think this is one of the hardest exercise for a marketer. But and then really come back to where we can add value. How can I entertain? And understand that our brands nowadays, we participate in those moments. We don't own these moments. I think before was easier for us to talk to consumers, to bring consumers to our world. Now we need to participate in their world. And I think there's something bigger on entertainment. Some of our brands, we have such a rich stories of our founders. For example, I don't know if you guys watch it in Netflix, the House of Guinness, for example, that is a show that is performing really well, that we talk about our brand, that we talk about our history, but we entertain consumers in a big screen in 2 hours for them to really get to know our brand in a way that it's a marketing without they knowing that it's a marketing. So I think this is a challenge that we can go from rituals to really providing in a big screen that it's so good to have that possibility nowadays, because again, let's face it, 5-7 seconds is really hard for us to convey anything to consumers because they are so overwhelmed and bombarded with so many messages that when we decide what not to do and we understand what we can add value from our history of our brands or the ritual of our cocktails, I think we find a niche that people don't even think about, but they have a drinks in their hands and maybe watching some content that they will get to know more about our history.
Gee, I love this sort of from, as I said, introductory-wise, sort of an industry that probably have relied too much on interruption and actually thinking more on participation. One of the things I think Nestlé has been good at in terms of, because you also had this where to show up, where not to show up. And I know Nestlé really look at how can you actually use sort of data, intelligence, insights to sort of drive some of these decisions, both in terms of informing the creative work, but also just to make it more meaningful. So maybe you can talk a little bit to that as well.
Okay, so hello everybody. Nice to be here with you. And look, I'm coming from a week in Paris where I participated in the Vivatech. So it was a teaser to Ken. And so we cannot deny technology nor data as a very important tool. And we talk about the democratization of data there and the social impact. The people are benefiting from this. What we are using data for nowadays is to scale creativity and to make creativity not functional or mechanical, but to lead us to good experiences. In Nestlé, we have tools that we've been using to track consumer, and one example is the Knowledge Nest. Is a research repository for all around the world, where you can see, for example, the habits of breakfast of a consumer in the northeast and in the southeast of Brazil, and you believe me, they are different. And the Knowledge Nest is something that we used to say that if only Nestlé knew what Nestlé knows. So, but today Nestlé knows because we have all those tools and it is empowered by AI. And then we have another tool which is called AI Stay, very suggestive name, where we can plot innovation and test how they would perform. So a lot of things to deeply understand, to put consumer in the center, and then really try to make him feel an experience to be engaged to our brands. When we have 5 generations living together in the same world, we have also the responsibility to make a bridge. And one example that we did soon was the Super Mario entertainment. We made this co-branding with some confectionery local brands in Brazil. And it was more than only a promotion, but really bridging millennials and alpha generation, because we found it a space where both generation has the same pleasure to be. One of them, it was about nostalgia, and the other one is really there. And it was a very, very interesting advertising or campaign, better than just talking about biscuits or something like this.
It's so funny. You remind me, we had Ali Rez from Impact BPDO on stage yesterday, and he actually shared that his son in Dubai was the one who was saying, Ali, go on the bicycle, don't go by car. So there's something amazing about that bridge between generations. Just a bit of a curiosity, how many of you have changed the way that you collect data and insights over the last couple of years? Some hands up for those who are, most of you, yes. So I think there is a necessary change in terms of the type of data that we can get. I like that you said, what not to do. And we obviously here in the Lions Impact Hub and around sustainability and responsibility, I think that tend to be kind of like you're being scolded by your mother or father, right? Don't do this, turn off this, don't. And it's not very aspirational if you want to change people's minds or behaviors. And as a brand that is, as you said, sort of synonymous with sort of celebration and fun, community, how do you sort of strike that balance? How do you make it aspirational? How do you inspire us to change?
I think this is, and this all starts in my business from a regulatory place, right? Because we have really clear rules of what we can do, what we cannot do. But when we understand that this is not something that decreases the power of creativity, but it can even empower our creativity, when our teams and our agencies and our partners really know that this can help shape the behaviors that we want to see in 10 to 20 years, then this becomes part of our central strategy. We moved, like 10 years ago, we saw that the generations will relate to alcohol very differently, like we are seeing right now. And we saw a lot of benefits, because what we want consumers to do is really to enjoy it in a way that it's moderate, because our brands that are 200 years, they need to be here for the next 200 years, not for the next 5. So and we are very good of making a behavior desired. We are a business that it's almost a fashion industry, that we can turn a martini into an accessory, and a consumer that visualizes it with a cocktail in their hand, they can see completely different. Like if you're holding a juice, but if you have a Negroni, or if you have a martini, or if you have any of our other cocktails, it can really drive desire. When we put this regulatory piece from a bottom of an ad, don't drink and drive, to the center of our strategy, we started to make this habit of moderation something that is desired for consumers. So now what we see in the generations that have a lot of noise out there is that consumers are drinking less. That's amazing. We have actually 20% more people in the category in the next 5 years. But when people decide to go out, they have less volume of drinks. And this is great. They are deciding not to have a lot of drinks in their occasions, but to have moderate, and then this lends to a more premium behavior. So now that I'm going out a little bit less, that I'm deciding to drink a little bit less, instead of drinking X, I want to have a Negroni. I want to have a Moscow Mule. I want to have a martini. I want to have a mocktail that has the same desirability as a cocktail. When we bring the mocktail and the zero alcohol, we have a zero alcohol bar down here at the Palais. You all should try some of our cocktails that has no alcohol. You feel the same experiences, both sensorial experiences, but still having a beautiful cocktail in a beautiful glass with a beautiful ice made by a beautiful bartender out there. So the ritual is there, the desirability is there, and we decided to make a behavior that was really related to now I have a boring person telling me that I need to drink water now, to something that it's aspirational. And this is what will drive this industry for the next a lot of years to come.
I will say, just in full transparency, I'm a Dane and grew up with not the best of relationship to alcohol. So it's good to see today that actually it's quality over quantity. We just discussed. My favorite drink is a Mezcal Negroni. That's my little secret favorite there. Yours was
a 1942 tequila just over ice. But let me tell you something on that too. The behavior of moderation and balance goes way above alcohol. With the level of information that we receive every day, if you don't moderate in everything in your life, it's impossible to navigate modern life. It's impossible. The content that I decide to consume, the categories that I decide to consume, the number of friends that I don't have the time to see as I wanted to have. So you need to make choices. Life is forcing people to make choices. If we decide that we as brands, we can help consumers navigate that, and we have a participation, we have a responsibility, then we have a bigger role.
I think you all have to practice the Buddhist concept of moderation in can right now. You have 3 eyes on you, please. So obviously one thing is, again, one category which at least one sort of common denominator. I know you guys do a lot of things across besides the more moderate drinking. But when we suddenly turn to your sort of broadness across many, many categories, I mean, how do you navigate that type of complexity yet still being able to connect with consumers?
Well, we have the benefit and the joy but also the challenges to navigate in such a range that includes confectionery, coffee, to nutrition, pet care. But what we found interesting is to see that what really matters is the lifestyle, the moment of life in the cycle, and not only the products. By the way, a pet owner can also drink coffee, can maybe have a baby, because today we never know. And at the same time, eat a chocolate. So we look for those synergies between among the categories. And what's very interesting is that we try to be there with the strong essence. I'll give you an example. Kit Kat, have a break, have a Kit Kat, is living for years. Of course, we have to tropicalize or to update it. And so we find territories where we don't interrupt people, but we participate in their conversations. So music is one territory. We sponsor a huge festival in Brazil, which is called Rock in Rio. But also lately, recently we started to sponsor Formula 1. And why Formula 1? Because Formula 1 is rejuvenating.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so we are sponsoring a pilot called Bortoleto. He's here. And, it was his fandom. They were like posting that they were in the supermarket buying products to help Bortoleto to finance, to have a more evolved engine motor. Car engine. So it's very interesting to see how we can navigate in different areas. Another one is coffee. It's very different how people are consuming coffee. Today, the younger generation, they don't consume coffee as the 50-plus people used to, like black, strong coffee. Nowadays, they add indulgence, they have parties around coffee, they add a lot of ingredients, and imagine with brands as Nespresso, Nescafé, Dolce Gusto, we have the whole world of possibilities to engage those consumers in different moments of their lives. And last but not least, we also track the origin of the coffee, which turns to be also very important. So we made a campaign named Coffee Makers, which shows where the coffee comes from. And at the same time, it's a stimulus to the young generation that most of the times they leave the crops and they go to university elsewhere, but to come back to apply what they learn, but still stay with the families in the crops.
Ionah, it's so interesting to see this. It's almost like you connect the data points to this, right? It's the same in your category, that actually there's a generational change that's happening quite fast in terms of how products are consumed, the changing rituals, and sometimes if we as marketeers don't stay in tune with those, we're actually losing opportunities. We might actually lose relevance for the products. And when it comes to marketing in general, I think one word we hear all the time in Cannes is culture, culture, culture. Everybody talks about culture, and you talked about festivals. I mean, how do you make sure that you participate the right way in culture? But in so many ways, I think culture is probably also one of the best drivers of sustainability in many ways. So if we cut away I do hate the word sustainability, but if we just say what people actually care about, and care and culture has a lot of things in common. So how do you sort of use sort of care and what matters to people as a driver of this sort of sustainable change, sustainable behavior change?
I think there's some ways. We have also the lucky to have brands that are really bigger than the categories. I think the example of Johnnie Walker is a brand that it's a Scotch whiskey brand that we have in Brazil, the second biggest market of Johnnie Walker in the world. But Johnnie Walker represents progress. Johnnie Walker has a mantra of keep walking for 25 years. So people in Recife, that is in the northeast of Brazil, is the biggest consumer per capita of Scotch whiskey in the world, bigger than Scotland, because the way that people connect with Walker and the way that people connect with the brand, you see that the keep walking message really means a lot to people. So when we decide to go through music, for example, I think the easiest way, people use a lot of our brands in their songs. So we have a KPI to understand the number of times that our brands are mentioned in songs. And then we have the country music that is sertanejo that talks more about one brand. And we have trap and funky that we had this beautiful Scottish brand. And then we saw that consumers, that it's White Horse, they keep talking about Cavalo Branco. This is the way that consumers talk about it in such a different way. So we need to full reposition the brand, understanding that the consumers was having a different relationship with the brand. So we do have the participation in the territories, but we can have a participation that is thriving music forward. So we have a case that it's really close to my heart, that it's now here being discussed in Cannes, that we found out this guy that is called Paulinho da Costa. Paulinho da Costa is one of the biggest percussionists of the world. He did songs with Michael Jackson, with Whitney Houston, with Madonna. So he's really well known in the music industry in Los Angeles. Nobody knows him in Brazil. So when we talk about, and then this campaign of really shining a light in his story, led him also to having his name in the Walk of Fame. In Los Angeles. So the first Brazilian born in Brazil to have his name in the Walk of Fame. So look at this step. Look how meaningful this step can be. And look how this can really connect with consumers. And then the brand is a moment to celebrate this moment. And I think in Brazil specifically, Brazilians are eager to have more heroes, to connect more with people that they can be inspired by. So we can go into music, putting drinks in their hands in festivals and shows that we will do, and we need to do that big. But we can also show through the purpose of our brand how we can push music forward.
I think that's not just in Brazil we need heroes. In general, I think we need more heroes and great leadership in the world. So I think it's a worldwide problem there. In terms of how Nestlé use culture as a super highway to connect to people, can you share a little bit there as well?
Sure. So culture is really the world. But, you know, I have a lot of examples to share with you, but I will choose some of them. You know, we come from preconception until healthy aging with our products. So one campaign very interesting that we made thinking about what's happening, culture, and etc. It's for a product called Materna, which is a supplement for pregnant women. And it's called I Crave. And of course, it meant that women, they have those craving for food when they are pregnant, but it also could mean that I crave for not being judged if I don't want to be pregnant. So it was about real maternity, real options. So with this, we are also empowering women to make their choices. And when we come to the other point of the life for healthy senior, we have a product called Nutrient Senior, which was launched a long time ago, but always with this spirit of making people live not longer, but with more quality. So it's a supplement for older people. And we made a campaign like, what do you want to be when you grow old? So it's different. We will also always ask this to children, but then we are asking to adults because, you know, we have a lot of life opportunities within one life. And more recently, we find two signals that were very important. One was that 50-plus audience in TikTok was getting higher, and it amazed me because I didn't know. And
Do you have a TikTok account?
Yes, I do.
Good.
I need to.
I'll do mine today.
If I tell you no, my colleagues from TikTok, they, you know. So, and the other one was about the Korean soap operas and the vertical dramas. So we produced with TikTok soap opera with 5 episodes about aging, about the invisibility that people who are aging sometimes feel. And it was very, very interesting. So those are 2 examples of culture. And there is another one, which is about Stranger Things, also with Netflix. We connected Netflix with some confectionery brands that we have in Brazil. And it was very interesting because we didn't interrupt life of consumers. They were watching the new episode, the last episode of the series, and they could scan a barcode and receive the product in their home, and it was like in a packaging like the supermarket of Stranger Things and everything else. So people felt really belonging to the theme.
What I love about both examples and both sides of this conversation is basically that it has really not necessarily not much to do with sustainability or impact per se. It has something to do with actually driving effectiveness and building meaningful connections. And I think it's sometimes something we forget, and I think it's important that we broaden the conversation. Now we sit in the Alliance Impact Hub, but I think there is just so many reasons for why this makes sense from a brand, from an effectiveness point of view overall. So if we sort of remove the do-good hat, it's great, that's an added benefit, but it seems like it's good for business. So it's good that both cases, both sides demonstrate that. Also just want to touch a little bit on the algorithm, the AI stuff. We can't get around it, unfortunately. We have to talk about it. Should brands sort of optimize for attention or more for the sort of human agency when we talk about algorithms?
I think human agency needs to be a brand growth pillar. I think we need to understand that and make it part of our plans. Technology help us optimize and help us accelerate the way that consumers will connect to our brands. But I think attention for me is something that we haven't nailed. We haven't. We still have the same media KPIs that we had a long time ago. So we still talk about coverage and frequency, and now it's time for us to evolve. Again, when we think about the era of attention and how consumers are evolving, both from being in a multi-screen situation, when they move from a big screen to a small screen, for marketers, let's face it, it became harder, much harder. But now they have more balance, like I was saying, with the bigger screen. So I think we need to engage that we need to fight for consumers' attention. And this whole conversation is something that is really well connected. How we're going to fight for consumers' attention? We need to guarantee that we be part of their conversations, that we participate, that we don't push too much, that we tell stories that they want to engage, that we do marketing without the feeling that it's marketing, because this is how they're going to interact to our brands. So it's a complex ecosystem. And we need to do through AI, and we need to have our human agency there really well established for our brands. Again, very complex, and this comes back to the teams and to the partners that we have. I think what I feel is that I need teams and partners that really push me, that really help me see what I'm not seeing, that really, I hate when I go to a meeting and everybody says, you know, like, don't try to please us. I think as we try to provoke ourselves, this is the world right now. So sometimes we fight, sometimes we get into a lot of discussions, but I think this is the way that we grow our people, that we grow our brands, and that we really guarantee that we are trying to look at everything that we have available, knowing that we won't, and being okay with that.
Yeah, but I think you're right. It's interesting that since the early days of digitalization, we're still fighting to crack that attention thing. We have smarter and smarter tools, yet it does seem like every marketeer at the moment are sort of in that exact struggle. How do we push through? What's the secret recipe to that? I think you touched on some things around participation, and, culture, etc., that sort of leads us to some answers.
Yeah.
But
can I say something about Latins? I think we are. Again, I'm going to talk about my Latin people, but this world of polarity, we have been there quite a long time. I think this is part of the way that we live our lives. So the end situation, I think we are a nation that we don't talk or. We always talk about end, and we are in a world of ends. So and this is hard for us to learn and deal with ambiguity.
I wonder what your answer is to that question, because obviously every brand now use AI, use data. I mean, what is the competitive advantage right now? If all these use these tools, how is Nestlé going to do this differently?
Yeah. Just one word for attention, and I was reflecting while Guy was talking to us. You are during all day, you are making choices. You made a choice to be here. You have a lot in Cannes. You have to make choices every hour. So we are feeling the same. And who is gaining the attention? It's very personalized. So what I think about AI and digital and data is that it is allowing us to be more personalized. So you can make a campaign, but then you, with the help of the data and the help of creativity and then a human touch, because I don't believe that AI or data can do it all by itself. We are here in a creativity festival, and we see beautiful things that engages, that make us cry, that make us laugh, that make us live. So what we can really leverage with data is personalization, engagement, and really scale creativity.
I love that, the ultimate, the human touch, right? How do we make sure that that is still relevant? How do we make sure that we can, that we can reach the people we want? And I think it becomes, in the case you mentioned earlier, where as a company you're touching many different generations. In fact, you're touching young people, you're touching grandparents. How do you make sure that that is not something where we end up, again, sort of polarizing people, but you actually kind of find things that unite them? How do you make sure you unite these generations?
On the contrary, I think we are really trying to bridge generations. Yeah. And we are very worried with this. How can we engage more than one generation at the same time? Not polarizing, but I told you the example of women choices. I told you the example of how you get older and how we can help people to live better lives with purpose. And when we are talking about products for healthy aging, we are talking with adults that are caring for the healthy aging. We are in a generation where we have to take care of our parents and our children. So I think this is the way that we can, with culture, with data, and with creativity, we can really target a lot of people from different generations, but in the benefit of living together the same experience.
Again, actually, a lot of things happening, right? It seems like there's a lot of cultural shifts that's happening that makes it just much more hard to be a marketeer today. How do you navigate all of that? A lot of change happening. So obviously, always when we talk about sustainability, the big word consumption come in there, you know. And obviously, we are now a $1 trillion industry, which for those of you who work in tech seems almost like a little kid that sells cake at the side, because that's, I guess, is the value of one tech company recently, right? SpaceX. So maybe a big industry, maybe a small industry, depending on how we view it. But obviously, the idea about the constant pressure on a CMO, kind of quarterly results, growth, you know, get products consumed more. But I think you touched on something that I just want to zoom back on as a sort of more of a closing, which is the more intentional consumption. How can you go back into your organization and say, I found a smarter way of driving growth. I found a smarter way of driving consumption.
Yeah, of course, we need to grow, right? But we can drive growth that first. This conversation about generation is really nice, because when you think about connecting people and the time in the table and the time in a socialization moment, this is something that, again, goes beyond, and it's bigger than that. And when we put the moderation piece inside of it, we become partners of a specific generation on helping their young adults consume better. When I have 3 kids, and who needs to teach my kids that it's time to stop screen is me. I really hope that the industry also talk to them and help me on educating better them on what is the right level of moderation to consume screen, and this can go on and on in all of the categories. And then when we come back to this situation of drinking less per occasion, we are able to invite more consumers in, and they look at our category in a more premium space, that they want to have better experiences, they want to have better cocktails, they want to have better in better places. The math really, really works. So the case of Brazil, all the Brazilians that are here, 10 years ago, we didn't have any cocktail in a bar, 0. If you order a spirit, you would have a spirit with a soda, and that's it. So the fact that we developed this whole industry, we made it a ritual that it's less drinks per capita, such desire that consumers now, we are double the size in 5 years. And in a market that it's heavily a beer market, there's so much space for us to grow in that sense, that now we prove the case, I think. So it's not about long-term growth, it's about delivering the short-term while we are building an industry, again, that will be here for the next 200 years. We have a role for consistency and sustainability of alcohol. This is an industry that you need to understand, that you need to know, that you need to follow the guardrails and be creative within the guardrails for us to be here. It's not an easy industry to work. But once you understand and you put that part of your strategy, then the long term pays off.
And I completely agree with you that it does seem like there is a sustainability often being sort of a driver of premiumization across categories, in fact, right? That sustainability becomes this argument about, better ingredients, more heritage. You talked about it in the coffee example as well. Where does your coffee come from? These things sort of drive premium prices, premium experiences. One thing I want to to try and slowly wrap up this session, I want to sort of ask you about, because typically we talk a lot about sort of campaigns, but a lot of the examples you talk about almost feels more like sort of cultural moments. So have you sort of changed your way of looking at that? Is that an ethos? What's behind that?
I was thinking about your question about the CMO complexity today, and that's really true. I think that one thing that I didn't mention is about another layer that we are now to run, which is the influence layer. And in Nestlé, we have this ecosystem of influence. We started a long time ago. It's not long, it seems long, like 5 years ago. It's not that long. Training micro and nano creators for them to improve themselves and grow. Today, we don't need this anymore. So today, we work with creators, we work with affiliates, we work with internal influencers. So it's the spontaneous voice of our collaborators telling people how is their daily life, how are the products that they deal with. And so it's a lot of layers that we add to our campaigns to reach the right community through those creators. So this is another layer that help us to spread the message, the right moment, the right platform, through voices that are authentic.
I'm so happy that you land on one of my favorite words, which is, in fact, authenticity, which I think is one of the key things in this space that you come across as authentic. I wish we had more time to dwell into this. I think we covered a lot of terrain here today, to be honest. So let's just, and I'll do a quick wrap up, but just give Guy and Ionah a quick round of applause and stay sitting. So let's... I think there's a lot to be learned from some of this. I think one of the key takeaways is obviously, and I think we'll struggle with this going forward because we know this. Let's stop interrupting. Let's start participating in culture. I think we should have learned that by now, but I think it's so good to be reminded by that as well. I think something I saw across both two different was really find into that universal human truth. That's actually what drives the meaningfulness. That's something I picked up across both of you. And then use the AI and the data to actually almost stay ahead, stay informed, to make better choices. And lastly, I also want to say, and this is probably a key point, because why do we have Brazil here by the table? We have Brazil by the table because we can learn a lot from Brazil. Because obviously you guys were Creative Country of the Year last year. Let's get some applause for that.
And we are the second creator economy in the world.
Wow.
We only lose to China.
Yeah, fair battle.
Fair battle.
Few more people, fair battle. But it's also just to say that Creative Country of the Year obviously comes from driving creativity, driving effectiveness, and I think that the really hidden power behind effectiveness is emotionality. When both of you share these campaigns, whether it's screen time or whether it's generational bonding, that's emotional stuff. That's what drives effectiveness. So tomorrow we will have passing of the torch. Unfortunately, you didn't keep it for this year. Hopefully you're back next year. So tomorrow between 4 to 6, we have open house for good here. 2 to 4, thank you. Some time zone, it will between 4 to 6, but in this time zone, very true, 2 to 4. Open house for good, no badges needed, no nothing, where the torch will be passed from Brazil to France. We'll see how that goes in football, but we'll not touch on that right now. So thank you again for showing up, and it's always a great reminder that by the end of the day, this industry is about people, it's about CMOs who dare to drive change, who dare to show up, and thank you for being those two types of CMOs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas.